everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. A Catholic and a convict walk into a bar. Not exactly, but you get the picture. It's a picture that will be seen by millions of voters here and all around the world. Tonight's debate, one part sacred American political tradition, the first and possibly only presidential debate, and the other two parts undignified first, thanks to one of the two participants being someone with so little respect for our political traditions, the traditions of our very elections, that he sought to end the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power by denying the irrefutable fact of his own defeat and inciting an insurrection. It will be the first time a current president debates an ex-president. It'll also be the first time one of the participants is currently awaiting sentencing for his criminal conviction. The substance, or whether there is much substance debated, well, that's an open question, too, at this hour. President Joe Biden, who is now in Atlanta for tonight's debate, you can see him here greeting supporters just a few minutes ago, faces a familiar debate opponent in Donald Trump. Trump is a candidate who has a conspiracy theory for every vulnerability he has as a political candidate. Trump claims the 2020 election was rigged, when really the American people rejected him, sent him packing after 4 years. He claims that Joe Biden tonight will be, quote, jacked up for the debate so that he can pre-butt a potentially rambling, incoherent performance on his own part. He claims his criminal conviction is the work of President Joe Biden and a weaponized Department of Justice, when it is actually the work of completely independent prosecutors in New York and a jury of Trump's peers who came to the conclusion that he was guilty after looking at the facts and witnesses, many of them Trump confidants. But it is Trump's criminal conviction in and of itself that has so far reshaped the race more dramatically than any other event, with Fox News' own analysts showing a serious and pointing to as a warning sign, a serious decline in Trump's support among independent voters. And it is Trump's conviction that he most desperately needs to spin tonight, in some of the same ways he desperately needed to spin the Access Hollywood tape 8 years ago ahead of a debate. Politico reporting this, quote, the issue of his conviction is almost certain to come up during the 90-minute debate. It'll be the first time that either Trump or Biden will confront the prospect of sustained questioning on the subject, as well as the first time that the two men will have the opportunity to speak directly to one another about it. Reporting from the New York Times suggests that the Biden camp sees it all as part of a bigger picture around Trump's lack of fitness for office. From that reporting, quote, for Mr. Biden, making the debate about Mr. Trump means confronting him for his role in the January 6th attacks on the Capitol, his willingness to pardon people convicted in the riot, who Mr. Trump has called hostages, and his remark that he's not going to be a dictator, quote, except for on day one. And one more, Mr. Trump's new status as a convicted felon. The Biden campaign has begun to cast Trump's legal woes under a broader umbrella, arguing that the former president cares only about himself and is running in part to avoid prison. American voters on the verge of witnessing the first and perhaps only historic high-stakes presidential debate of the 2024 general election campaign is where we start today with some of our most favorite experts and friends in Atlanta, the site of tonight's debate. Former senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill, is here with us. Plus, former RNC spokesman, the host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, is here. Joining us on set, former Obama campaign manager, MSNBC political analyst David Plouffe is here. Tim Miller, I start with you. You've been a newsmaker yourself this week with Adam Kinzinger's really strong, really enthusiastic endorsement of Joe Biden yesterday ahead of tonight's debate. Talk about whether that's some wind at his back politically, or whether this event itself, this 90 minutes of face-to-face squaring off, sort of eclipses everything that's happened before it.
Well, I think you need both. I think it's a both and, Nicole. I've been just passionately begging, I guess, any Republicans or former Republicans that are opposing Donald Trump to actually go that next mile and support Joe Biden. Because there are persuadable voters, all the ones that we've been talking about, that voted for Nikki Haley in those primaries. And I think that they are going to listen to people like Adam Kinzinger, who showed courage on January 6th and who, are still conservatives, but are voting for Joe Biden. I think that they we'll listen to the ad that Joe Biden put out today, the campaign put out today, featuring Alyssa Farah, who is the communications director, and John Bolton, and all these others, Mike Pence, all these others. And so I think it's important that they go that next step and endorse Joe Biden to help create a permission structure for those voters. That said, Joe Biden also has to help himself tonight, right? And I think there is a category of voters, some of this in the Nikki Haley category, some of this in the Democratic base who have some questions about Joe Biden, who want to see that he has the vigor tonight, who want to see that he is up for this job for the next 4 years. Paired together, I think having that outside support and the endorsees like Adam Kinzinger with a strong, aggressive performance tonight, I think we could see some movement for Joe Biden.
Let me show you, Clara, that ad that Tim's talking about, and let me ask you about how you turn them into, the permission structure is not just to reject Trump, but it's to go in and vote for and be an enthusiastic supporter of Joe Biden. It's a different thing, right, than just the rejection of Donald Trump, which has happened, at the highest levels, from his own vice president to the most important actors here, the voters themselves. Let me show you that ad, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Dictator, tyrant,
dangerous threat to democracy. I cannot in good conscience endorse Donald Trump.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
We worked with him. We knew him. This man is unfit to be president. A second term would be more dangerous than a first.
Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, they're fully prepared to take advantage of him.
Yes, I do regard him as a threat to democracy for all those things that make America great.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
And what does Joe Biden tonight do with that?
Well, listen, I think it's a pretty powerful ad. And by the way, there are more. I think it was great to include the military. And this is where we've talked some today about Nikki Haley voters. If you look at foreign policy, if this debate gets into foreign policy, I think it'd be really important for one of the pivots of Joe Biden to be to put Trump on defense about his love affair with the worst of the worst in the world, the people who don't want democracies or freedoms or rights to their citizens. This is where the Nikki Haley voters and a lot of those people that were in that ad lost it with Donald Trump. When they saw him playing footsie with Kim Jong-un and loving up on Putin, and then what he said about what Putin has done to the good people of Ukraine, trying to go in and change the boundaries of their country by force. This is where I think you get Trump on defense, because he doesn't have a good answer for all that stuff. And I think it's another place that you can shave some of those Republican voters away from Donald Trump and put them firmly in the Biden camp, because he does believe in NATO and he does believe in protecting our allies.
Okay, Claire, because you've watched every moment of this political train wreck with me for the last 9 years, let me just press you. This suggests that when we get to the foreign policy section, there'll be offense and defense and opportunities to make point. You're not expecting, tell me what you're expecting tonight.
Oh, I think it's going to get ugly. Don't get me wrong. And I think Joe Biden's number one priority, as I've said over and over again today, is to get under Trump's skin so Trump behaves according to his character, which is outrageously. That has to happen. But every time Trump attacks Joe Biden needs to deflect it with facts, and then he needs to pivot and punch. He needs to go right back and put Donald Trump on defense. Call him the loser he is and go after it. And I mean, throw haymakers, do whatever he needs to do to show pure strength against this guy.
Let me bring you in on this point, David Plouffe. This is in the Bulwark, and it says, here's how CNN should handle Trump at the debate but won't. Quote, here's what the CNN moderator should do when Trump posits one of his extraordinary lies. They should stop the debate. grind everything to a halt, and produce the receipts proving that Trump is lying. These receipts should be on paper and physically at the anchor's desk. There should be video packages ready and waiting to deploy to viewers supporting them. And the moderator should not move on until Trump admits that he is lying, even if that means that the debate never happens and we get 90 minutes of Jake Tapper and Dana Bash pointing to the evidence and asking Trump the same question over and over again, even if it means Joe Biden never gets to speak.
Well, that would be nice, but it's not reality. So this is on Joe Biden to manage this debate, to manage Donald Trump. You can't assume there'll be any assist from the moderator. And so I agree with Tim and Claire. I mean, he's got to show vigor.
Can I just press back momentarily? Why would it be an assist to the moderator to insist on the truth being uttered before they move on?
Well, maybe there'll be some moments where Jake and Dana say, wait, you said this 2 years ago, but having prepared folks for these debates as you have, you've got to assume this is all on you. And you can't be frustrated.
Just talk about an extraordinary burden. So Joe Biden has to defend his record. He has to defeat his debate opponent, and he has to be the only arbiter of truth.
Well, you know, he's trying to get rehired for the most important job in the world. He can handle that.
Yeah.
He did very well in the 2 vice presidential debates. He did well in the 2 debates with Trump. And so at the end of the day, this race right now, listen, it could be this is like 16, where basically all the polls are missing something. But if they're not, Trump's got a small but important lead in the battleground states. But Biden's got the ability, I think, to get some people over the line who just want to see him fight and be strong. And then there's a bunch of Democratic voters voting Democrat for Senate who aren't voting for Biden. And that ought to be another cohort he can get back tonight. And listen, if I were them, I wouldn't assume there's going to be another debate. So this is it. You take advantage of these 90 minutes. And that's the hard thing is, preparing these candidates is you have so little time. And I think the thing Biden has to avoid, and Trump too, even though he's the challenger, he's a former incumbent, going down the rabbit hill of defending your record with stats, it's just a stone cold loser. You can do a little bit of defense, what it means to the American people, and you got to paint the picture of like the next 4 years, me fighting for people, focused on democracy, focused on the economy, Trump focused on himself. And then I think there's going to be abortion moments potentially, maybe rule of law with the Hunter versus Trump way they've dealt with this, certainly immigration, certainly the tax cuts. So, I just at the end of the day, we don't know what the moderators are going to do. So if you're preparing somebody, you just kind of almost, you try and guess a little bit what questions they may ask, but you don't role play out whether they're going to interject or not.
Tim Miller, it was in the Bulwark, is in your publication. Say more about this provocative piece about what should happen tonight around just the truth, the facts.
Yeah, I think that what Jonathan was doing was definitely being provocative, but he's pointing to interviews that have actually happened with George Stephanopoulos, where he did this well. We can think of Jonathan Swan during COVID interviewing Trump has done this well. And look, it is a different scenario. Dealing with Trump is different. I agree with David that Joe Biden needs to be up for the job that he expects he's going to get, which is probably not a big assist from the moderators. But that said, no, we've not had a presidential debate before where one of the people on the stage tried to attempt a coup and continues to lie about whether we have elections in this country that are fair and free, and continues to lie about whether our Justice Department is fair or whether it's biased. Like this is the first time we have somebody like this. I think Donald Trump's been on these debate stages before, but we can now add to his just repeated, mendacious, obnoxious lying the fact that these things have happened. January 6th has happened. He's been convicted as a criminal, and he's going to lie, as you said in the intro, about both of these critical events. And so, okay, don't the moderators have some responsibility to hold him to account on that? Joe Biden also does, but so do the moderators. And there's going to be a balance in how to deal with that.
These conversations are uncomfortable. The moderators are two of the best in the business. They both are friends of mine. But how is the first question not who won the 2020 election?
Is that to me? That should be the first question. Yeah. That should be the first question. And by the way, if it's not the first question, and look, I'm a failed debate coach, so take my debate advice with a grain of salt. But having coached several candidates who failed against Donald Trump, so I trust Joe Biden. But man, if that's not the first question, it should be pretty, in the first 30 minutes. Something that Joe Biden interjects into the debate. Just, especially if it starts to get rowdy, looking over and be like, "You realize I beat you, right? Have you yet to admit that you've lost? You didn't show up to the inauguration. You sicked a mob on the Capitol. Capitol Police died because of your lie. Are you ready to admit now that you lost? I assume that Jake and Dana will get to that, but if not, Joe Biden's got to do it.
I mean, Claire, I guess what keeps me up at night is everything that they need to know about both these men is out there, right? Their concern about Joe Biden is around, it's not just his age, because it's about how he carries his age. It's a question about the delivery. He's someone who's had a lifelong stutter. It seems to have caught up with him in year 4 of the presidency, right? It's something that people view him as halting. But they're open to being wrong. And you look at the reaction in the Democratic coalition after the State of the Union. Oh, my God, where'd that guy come from? There's a lot of hand-wringing. That is something that's in the DNA of the Democratic Party and the Democratic coalition. It isn't in the Republican Party. Obviously, they nominated Trump 3 times. I want to ask you what our role is as we talk about this debate. A lot of people are going to watch this. This could be sort of an NFL football-sized audience. There's also going to be the people that consume the things that people say about it. You tell me the frame that should go around tonight's debate.
I think in a perfect world, I would love the frame to be darkness versus light. Listen, Donald Trump is appealing to a lot of people in this country that are just mad. They feel like they haven't been given a fair shot. And he is speaking to them in a way that no other politician has ever spoken to them. He says things he shouldn't say. That gives them some kind of sense that he's on their side. They're wrong about that. He's not on their side. He's busy promising tax cuts to big corporations and promising the billionaires that he gets them and has them and will take care of them. But they believe that. So I really think that what this should be is, overall, if you look at it from a distance, one is going to talk about how terrible the country is, how awful everything is, how America sucks, how everything is rigged. And the other one is going to talk about our ideals and be aspirational and be about the light that America can be to the rest of the world. I think that contrast can get some of those folks that haven't tuned in yet. The guy that's a jerk and impolite, and the guy who loves his family and really cares deeply about America. And yes, he's old, but you know what? He's lived a lot of years and knows a lot of stuff and gotten a lot done, and he cares about keeping our democracy strong. That could win over those people who haven't been paying attention. And mark my words, there will be people watch tonight that haven't paid attention at all, that still are not sure who's responsible for Dobbs and Roe being overturned.
It strikes me that they both stand up there as grandparents, right? And I can't count how many grandkids either of them has at the moment. But I've been saying on this show for days now that, and I prepared people, I mean, you prepared President Barack Obama. I prepared people who were less brilliant debaters, and I think they would say so. But a self-own was always one of our tools. You know, some humility, some like, I know, I mean, and some of these lines George Bush uttered in different settings, but he would make fun of his own malaprops. I mean, Sarah Palin walked out and said, "Can I call you Joe?" And I mean, what is sort of your advice on a self-own for Biden to just say, let's move past your concerns. We're both old, but here's what I will never do. I'll never steal classified documents. I'll never call military heroes losers and suckers. I'll never tell Mark Milley not to have a wounded veteran at a ceremony because, quote, nobody wants to see that. I'll never, ever make you embarrassed to have me as president. I'll never say that fame. I mean, he re-upped. You can grab women between the legs when you're famous in a deposition for E. Jean Carroll. That's his position today. How do you get on the record with all the things Trump's proud of that the country isn't?
Well, this is, you know, it's a huge opportunity for Biden because I agree with Claire. A lot of people are going to decide this election actually aren't up to speed on what Trump has said or done or what Biden has said or done. But, you know, you can't focus on 25 things. And so the challenge always is, because actually, if you think about it, moderators' questions, I guess CNN's doing 2 rounds of commercials. So each candidate probably has 38, 40 minutes. That's it. So you got to take advantage of that. So the Biden campaign is going to have a list, almost like a football coach scripting the first plays of the game, which is you've got to get these out. On age, I think you should embrace it, which is listen, we're both very old. And I get that a lot of Americans aren't excited about that, but our parties have chosen us, so that's where the differences end. And then at the end of the day, I do think reminding people what Trump lied about in terms of Roe not being on the ballot in 2020, pushing him and pounding him on the reason we don't have a border bill is him. talking about the Bush tax cuts, sorry, the Trump tax cuts. Sorry, I can't do it. I go back to debate mode. And, and obviously we're going to, and I actually think the Hunter Biden moment's going to be huge, right?
Tell me, say more about it. You said it twice. What is the opportunity with Hunter?
I think Joe Biden says, whatever you think about me, I love my family, I love my son. But a jury of his peers found him guilty.
I love
and
the
I
rule of
accept
law
that.
so much that,
I'm not going to commute a sentence. I'm not going to pardon him. Let's look at you. You duck accountability on everything. And so
you pardoned, Steve Bannon, you pardoned, all your political cronies. Right. I didn't even pardon my own
And you
son.
want no accountability. And this is what worries me, is if you get in there, you're not going to give a damn about anybody in America but yourself. And no one's going to get a job. No one's wages are going to rise. No one's going to get health care because of that. And I think Joe Biden can do that. But because of the concerns about his age, yes, I agree with Claire. It's got to be, I'm for the American people, Joe Biden, Trump's for himself. But he's got to be tough. He's got to put Trump on the defensive, because people think Trump is like this feral creature who's got strength. And if Biden can handle him, boy, that goes a long way to saying, okay, he's up for this.
Someone said to me, they'll go with the crazy person over the person they don't think can protect you from the crazy person every time. So it is this person who can catch the rabid raccoon in the box and send it away.
Well, remember what Bill Clinton said, rather be strong and wrong than weak and right in politics. And there's something to that.
I want to show you, and Biden was the person who the voters saw as strong and capable of caging the guy that was crazy and wrong 4 years ago. I want to show you all some of what that looked like, because it feels like we've lived 37 years since then. I have to sneak in a quick break. Claire and Tim, you're leaving us. Thank you for starting us off. We'll come back to you through the course of the night. We'll all be here all night. David sticks around for the hour. Still much more to come from Atlanta for us, home of the very first and potentially only presidential debate. It is hosted by our friends at CNN, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, but you can watch it right here on MSNBC with us. We'll be here before and after. We'll next talk with a member of the Biden-Harris re-election campaign. Adrian Elrod is here on how the president is getting ready for tonight. Not watching TV, I'm sure, so we'll find out what he's actually doing. Plus, knowing just how important the stakes are in November, former police officer Harry Dunn, who defended the United States Capitol and everybody in it on January 6th, is making sure no one sits the election out. He was with former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger yesterday as he endorsed Joe Biden, trying to get that message out. Officer Harry Dunn joins us here coming up as well. All those stories and more when Deadline White House continues on this debate day in America. After a quick break, don't go anywhere today.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white
supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that question?
The question is, the question is,
Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist.
My party is
and
me.
Socialist
right
healthcare.
Now, I am
and
the
they're going to dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the Democratic Party is what I, in fact, approved of.
So, I don't know if that's going to make you watch, make you drink, make you sign up for Netflix, but that is what happened the last time these two men squared off. Joining us at the table, senior spokesperson for the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign, Adrian Elrod is here. So, do you have a plan if Trump starts talking about sharks and electrocution? Because I watched Sarah Cooper is back with a great How to Vote, and it's so crazy, but it's so front of mind for Trump. I mean, is there a plan to deal with the crazy?
Yeah, I think, certainly our campaign, we have, as you know, a huge communications team that is really smart and really on top of, making the most out of these moments, making sure that they do break through because, I think a lot of people are going to tune in tonight, but not everyone that we're trying to reach is going to tune in. So we're going to make sure that we're using, those moments effectively to make sure voters understand, what we're dealing with here. But I think, Nicole, that's something that really struck me when you were showing that clip. If you notice, Joe Biden, when he was talking to the American people or presenting his case, he was looking at the camera talking to the American people. You're going to see him do that tonight. He understands what's at stake. He understands how important the issues are. So, yeah, Donald Trump is going to say crazy things. We know that. But this is the first time these two have been really in front of a primetime audience together in nearly 4 years. And it's the first time Trump really has been in front of an audience, that is not just the MAGA type of base. So I think you're going to see President Biden really focusing his argument on what he's going to continue to do for the American people. Whereas Donald Trump, who knows what he's going to do. But that's what the task is.
Sarah Longwell, who runs the Republican Voters Against Trump, as publisher of The Bulwark, has said on this show something that was sort of an aha. The largest voting coalition available to President Joe Biden is an anti-Trump coalition. So just politically, to move all those people to Biden voters in November, activating them, reaching them, animating them with their anti-Trump energies that already exist, is the largest pool of voters available. With that in mind, unless you disagree with the premise, but with that in mind, how do you make sure people know everything Trump has done, that Trump now celebrates the insurrection? Trump launched his campaign at Waco, a hotbed of domestic violent extremism in America. He's a convicted felon. In a sworn deposition, he restated his position that, quote, when you're famous, you can grab women between the legs. All the most awful things about Trump are things he has doubled down on in the last 4 years.
Yep. So it's a couple things. Number one, we did hire Adam Kinzinger's former chief of staff, Austin Weatherman, to run our Republicans for Biden effort. He's fantastic, and he's really making sure that all of the Republicans who did not support Trump in 2020 are, number one, with us. And number two, the people who have been, outspoken, people who used to work for Donald Trump are also in our corner, and that they're using their voices and amplifying their voices in a way that is reaching those people. Obviously, we're spending a lot of money. We've raised a lot of money. We're spending a lot of money to reach those voters. And we're also making sure that, we are using our networks and our message in a way that is breaking through. It's not always easy, Nicole, as you know, to break through in this fractured media environment. So we are getting creative. And when you look at where we put the infrastructure in the states, we've opened, I think, 250 offices in battleground states alone. So that's 7 states, right? So over 250 offices in those states. We just announced our 1,000th employee in those states. So we are taking this very seriously. We are laying the infrastructure now. This is necessary to make sure that, 6 weeks before the election, when early vote starts in some states, that we have the mechanism in place to be able to reach the very people that you're talking about.
Do you agree that a question should be asked about who won the 2020 election?
And tonight?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope it's asked me. That is going to be a major contrast moment for Joe Biden, President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump, if it passes any precedents here, he's going to make it very clear that he does not believe that Joe Biden won the election. He's going to say that. That is going to be a major contrast moment. Nicole, you talk a lot on your show about how, oftentimes we don't see Donald Trump all the time. His rallies are not being aired, on every single network all the time. Fox stopped airing them. Prime example. We have to remind the American people what we're dealing with, the unhinged person. And by the way, I don't have to tell you this. He's become even more unhinged since he's been president. January 6th, something triggered in him. Something set him off. He's become more erratic. He said that he's going to lead as a dictator on day one. If he doesn't win this election, there's going to be a bloodbath. It's terrifying. And we have to make sure that the American people understand what the stakes are. This is somebody who was already crazy before. He's crazier now. And that will be a major moment for President Joe Biden, not only to help make that contrast clear tonight, but also talk about how he's going to continue to deliver for the American people.
A couple things that have changed since they last faced off. His son faced criminal scrutiny from his own Justice Department, was prosecuted and convicted. His son is someone who the Republicans, it's like their white whale. They've always thought it was his political pinata. It's never really done any harm to President Biden politically ever. And it doesn't really even seem to juice the right the way it used to. They sort of threw up their hands and gave up on their manufactured weaponization committee. They couldn't find any there. But there does seem to be an opportunity to connect with the vast majority of Americans who've dealt with the disease of addiction and who've walked this walk, who've lived with children who they just wake up every day and they thank God they're alive and they're still fighting. And I wonder if this is a point where he's been through the worst you could imagine, where if Trump comes after him with it, I can picture Trump with some laptop waving it over his head. Trump's crazed, and this really has become a fever dream on the far right. It's not an electoral issue. around which Biden has any vulnerability. Is it something he's going to talk about if Trump comes after him on it?
Absolutely. He will 1,000% defend his son. And Nicole, you just hit the nail on the head. There are so many Americans around this country. If it's not a family member, it's a friend, someone who has suffered through addiction, someone who has come out on top. They understand this. This does not work. If Trump thinks that this is going to, play well with independent voters, it's not. I mean, maybe it's going to get some of his base excited, but he's not going to win this election. Donald Trump won't if he doesn't expand his base. He cannot win without expanding his base. So taking on Hunter Biden, the president's son, who, by the way, is not on the ballot, is not going to be an effective strategy. It hasn't worked so far. It's not going to work. And President Joe Biden, one of his greatest attributes is his empathy. And everyone knows that he is a strong family man who loves his family dearly. So that will be a moment. I mean, it will be a hard moment, I think, for, someone like me to watch because I care deeply about President Biden and his family. But I also know it's one of those moments that he will defend his son. He will rise to the occasion. He's done that numerous times when his family's been attacked. He will do it again tonight if the situation arises.
What's the one thing when you see the debate on your calendar that sort of jolts you awake in the middle of the night? What's your worry?
I don't know that I necessarily have a worry. I think it's more, and I'm not trying to just sound corny by saying this, I look at this as a moment, a real moment for our campaign, where the president can go out there, present his case to the American people, talk about not only what he's done so far, which he's not going to spend a lot of time talking about his accomplishments, but he's going to use his accomplishments as an example, as a proof point for how he's going to get more done in his second term. Mm-hmm. I think it's a real opportunity. I mean, sure, I think we were talking about this during the break. I mean, primary days, debate days, when you're sitting around waiting, what am I going to do to occupy my time? Thankfully, I'm doing television hits, so that's helping. But no, I think this is going to be a real opportunity for the president to talk to the American people. And it's tough to find moments to do that where you have so many people watching, and he has not really had a moment like that since the State of the Union. So this is going to be a really important night for him, an important night for this campaign.
Good luck tonight.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks for spending some time with us. When we come back, a new handful of Republicans are saying what Tim Miller talked about, the permission structure stuff. Jump in. The water's plenty warm enough.
How it works is you got a 98% offset, okay? There's big gaps here is when you're selling a whole bunch of electricity back to the utility company.